Welcome to the Long Beach Area Chamber of Commerce webinar presentation for today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeremy Harris, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chamber's President and CEO. We've got an excellent webinar for you today, and a timely one at that. In keeping with our growing program support of various topics during this time and that are impactful to our Long Beach area community, the Chamber and our wonderful partners in Charter Communications, Human IT, and the City of Long Beach are proud to bring you today's webinar. Topic of digital inclusion, as we also celebrate Digital Inclusion Week. Before we start, just a few housekeeping issues for today's webinar. I'll serve as your moderator, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. Look for that icon, insert your Q&A or question there. We'll also save questions for the very end after each panelist is already presented. Also, if you want to know more about the Chamber or membership, just send me a quick note in the chat box, and someone on our team will get back to you and follow up with you later today. Please note this webinar is being recorded and will be distributed to all registrants and Chamber members. If you have additional questions after the webinar, you may reach out to Amanda Donahue, who will be putting her contact info also in the chat box. We have 4 great panelists today, and I'll introduce each one of them before they begin. But let's first start with the tone for today's program by defining really what is digital inclusion and also what is digital equity. So the first part, digital inclusion, what is it? The City of Long Beach defines digital inclusion through an equity lens, which means being proactive, ensuring everyone has equitable access, the use of digital literacy training, the internet, technology devices, and other digital inclusion resources. Digital equity, what is that? Digital equity is when everyone has access and use of digital literacy training, the internet, and technology devices to be successful in society, our democracy, and economy, regardless of their background or identity. I think that's something that's profound and something that's much needed in today's day and age, especially during this time, as many of us are using electronic devices, such as being on this Zoom webinar. Now that we have that understanding, let's begin the program with some special remarks from our mayor, Dr. Robert Garcia.
Hey everyone, it's Mayor Robert Garcia, and I know that today we're virtual, and like always, it's great to be involved and work with people that really believe in digital inclusion. I want to, of course, begin by thanking the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce, Human IT, talk about the amazing work that they do, and our Long Beach Digital Inclusion Work Group. The work that's happening with them, and not just them, but all the partners across the city, including Spectrum and so many others, is really amazing. Think about just what Human IT is doing, getting Chromebooks and internet service, getting devices to folks in our schools, in our senior facilities. This is really amazing work, and I just want to thank Human IT, who I know really involved in what we're doing. Just thank you for really connecting Long Beach. And then I think about all of our corporate partners, many of which are involved today with the Chamber of Commerce and others. Thank you for your incredible and amazing work. The truth is that while most of us that are probably watching this event have access to technology, whether it's our phones, tablets, or computer, how many Zoom meetings are we all doing? The truth is that we know that a lot of families across our city and really our country are really facing that digital divide. We need to do everything we can to also support them. If they don't have access to Wi-Fi, if they don't have access to technology, it really puts their families back, but also our country and our economy. Now, I'm proud of the work that's happened in Long Beach, whether it's putting in Wi-Fi in public buildings, in our libraries or community centers, whether it's been expanding some of our fiber network, our fiber master plan, and the work of our Technology and Innovation Commission. We know we have a lot of work to do still, and that's where all of you that are here virtually come in as well. I just want to thank you all for continuing to work together, especially in this moment of COVID-19. Technology is more important than ever, and closing that digital divide is incredibly important for us to succeed as a city in the future. So thank you for having me.
That was great, and we appreciate the mayor taking time to give his remarks today. As you can imagine, he's incredibly busy, so he took some time out to record that for us. We had a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning with the sound. Once again, all of this is going to be online and accessible to our registrants along with the presentation and also the mayor's video. So we'll get that out to you at the end of this program. So let's get into our program. But before we do that, just a couple of quick items about the Chamber and why digital inclusion is important to the Chamber and what we've been doing in and around those topics. And also, essentially, what is the Chamber for those of you that might not be familiar with us? We'll go to the next slide, please. So the Chamber, we're constantly looking at ways to make sure that government, our corporate partners, are connected. We serve as those convener. And here's just a list of various things that we've been doing during this time, during COVID-19, and at the same time outside, and making sure that our members and the general business community here in Long Beach continue to stay connected, albeit at this time virtually. I won't get into all the details on the slide. Again, the presentation will include all of this, but if you have any questions about how the Chamber can help you or your business, please feel free to reach out to us. Now let's get on with our panelists, folks that are here today to really hit home about digital inclusion and why that's so important. It's a pleasure to introduce our first presenter, Gabe Middleton from Human IT. He's the co-founder and CEO of Human IT, is also a social entrepreneur, the understanding of startups, sustainable and technology practices. A native by nearby commerce, Gabe is passionate about technology, collaborating, and giving back. These passions have led him found Human IT, an organization committed to providing digital access to those in need. With that, it's a pleasure to welcome Gabe. Gabe, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And if we go back to the first slide real quick, that would be helpful. Appreciate that. First of all, really honored to be a part of this panel discussion. Digital Inclusion Week is a very important week for us at Human IT. It's a week to celebrate all the great work that so many folks in my organization work tirelessly to shrink the digital divide, and it's nice to see the whole country kind of celebrate Digital Inclusion Week and really highlight some of the work that we've done in the past. So really appreciate being here. Also want to highlight that I've been a resident of Long Beach for the past 12 years. So I'm really proud to be a resident of Long Beach, especially to see our great city put a focus on digital equity and actually come up with a plan and bring partners together to ensure that everyone has access to the technological tools needed to succeed in 2020 and beyond. So really proud to be a resident of Long Beach. As Jeremy mentioned, my name is Gabe Middleton. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Human IT. And my role as CEO at Human IT is, it's my job to set a strategic vision for the organization. Also to ensure that there's a great culture of inclusivity at our organization, as well as just to be the biggest cheerleader for my entire staff, because they work so hard to ensure that everyone is connected to either computer, broadband connection, tech support, or digital literacy training. So Human IT, for those of you who don't know, we're an organization based out of, we're actually headquartered in downtown Long Beach, and we have facilities in Los Angeles as well. And it's our mission to basically create opportunities for those who are left on the wrong side of the digital divide. Some of the services that we provide to ensure that folks get on the right side of the digital divide, and if you could get to the next slide, please, include, like I mentioned, access to a good working computer. Unfortunately, there are still so many folks around this country and in our great city that don't have access to a good functioning computer in their home. That's really been highlighted, I think, over the last couple of months as we've seen schools completely transition to remote learning. And we've heard some incredible stories and some sad stories of students who aren't able to keep up with their education because they just don't have a good working computer in their home. And we're working tirelessly to fix that. And we've donated thousands of laptops and tablets just in the last few months to not only residents in Long Beach, but to folks all across the country. But access to a good working computer is necessary, but it's not sufficient if you don't have a good high-speed internet connection these days, especially since there's so many video calls that are required to keep up with learning or access telehealth, or even just staying connected with your family during this tough time, and getting on a video chat and to prevent loneliness is really important, and oftentimes doesn't get mentioned. But once you have access to a good working computer and an internet connection, you need to make sure that you know how to use it. So we provide digital literacy training to help ensure that you can really get the full effects of your computer as well as your broadband connection. Something that's not listed here that I'm very proud to be able to provide our community, and our team works really hard in providing great technical support to the folks who we distribute the computer and internet connections to. You know, you can't learn everything in a digital literacy course all in one go. Even the most techie among us have issues every once in a while. So we have a really good tech support staff that's standing by to answer any tough questions or any handling technical issues that our recipients may encounter. So those are the 4 pillars and the 4 services of how we shrink the digital divide in Long Beach and across our country. If we could go to the next slide, please. Now you may be thinking, okay, well here are your services. You know, how do you identify folks to connect your services to? When we really believe in creative collaboration at Human IT, it's one of our guiding values, and we use that guiding value to already partner with the already great organizations that are in our city. You know, there's so many great CBOs that call Long Beach home. You know, we partner with the Long Beach School District to work with the folks who they already serve, right? A lot of them are already low income, so we try not to reinvent the wheel and conduct direct outreach to the folks that we serve. We look to create partnerships and creatively collaborate with CBOs across our city to identify folks and to tailor our services to those, you know, that demographic specific needs. Not everyone needs a computer. Sometimes they just need access to that low cost internet. Not everyone struggles with you know, digital literacy training. They just need access to a good working computer. So we really try to make our services a la carte, and we really try to just produce the best option for each individual. And we do that and via partnerships with school districts, nonprofits, and other community-based organizations. Next slide, please. However, you know, the digital divide it's a monster of a problem, right? The pandemic has really highlighted this issue over the last couple months, like I mentioned before. Unfortunately, millions of folks still don't, across our country, still don't have access to a good working computer or a broadband connection in their home. And that's a major problem, especially if you want to continue your education in today's climate and even beyond. And so even through partnerships with community-based organizations, it really takes an even bigger village to make a dent in this digital divide. It takes great cooperation with local government, as well as larger business entities like Charter Communications and the Chamber of Commerce, the Long Beach Chamber of Commerce, and just the city of Long Beach in and of itself. Excuse the siren if you could hear that in the background. So as I was mentioning, we can't do it alone. We rely on these great partnerships to be able to receive funding, so that way we can be there for the families when they need us most. So can you get to the next slide, please? One of those partners is here, right? Charter Communications, Charter Spectrum, one of the main internet service providers in Long Beach. They've been a great partner for many years now, have donated $75,000 to our organization over this past year. And I can tell you this money has gone a long way for our organization. When coronavirus really hit us in March, we used this money to really staff up and be able to, so we were able to handle the large influx of families reaching out to us in need of either broadband connection or hardware. So I really want to highlight Charter Communications here and just say thank you for your support. It's much needed, especially today. So thank you. So, like I mentioned before, it takes a village, right? Hopefully you learned something about our services, and maybe you know someone who needs good tech support or a broadband connection, or just needs to be digitally trained. So please, I would encourage you guys to visit our website or email innovation@humanit.org if you want to partner with us, or you want to align your brand with Human IT and get into the fight to shrink the digital divide. So thank you again, Jeremy, and thank you again for everyone who attended today's webinar, just to listen about what Human IT is all about. And hopefully you learned about what the digital divide is, and hopefully you're inspired to join the fight and align yourself with Human IT. And we're so glad to be here. Like I said, we're here celebrating Digital Inclusion Week, but we understand that after this week, a lot more work needs to be done, and we're excited to get to work.
Thank you, Gabe, and thanks for that. I'm sure we're going to have some questions about the work you're doing. Excellent and wonderful job. Moving right along, our next presenter is Lynn Bell. Lynn Bell is the Vice President of Strategic Sales for Spectrum Enterprise. Ms. Bell leads the company's strategic sales organization in the West region, which encompasses 14 Western states and Hawaii. She's responsible for sales success of all business products across Spectrum's largest enterprise clients, including vertical sales organizations in healthcare, hospitality, government, and education. With over 25 years of experience in sales operations, strategy, and marketing in the business communications industry, Ms. Bell has a proven track record of building high-performance teams to consistently exceed their goals for revenue and market share growth. Ms. Bell is a graduate of Western Kentucky University, where she earned her bachelor's degree in journalism and psychology. With that, please welcome Ms. Lynn Bell. The floor is all yours.
Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks everyone with the Long Beach Chamber and guest speakers for having me today. As Jeremy mentioned in the introduction, I run a team of professionals across 14 states that provide services. They're highly trained folks that are trained in government and education and healthcare administration that sell to and support schools, cities, libraries, hospitals, are some of the more things that make me really, really proud of what we do in the community. But although I cover 14 states, I live here in Southern California. So the Los Angeles and Long Beach area are home to me, and where I'm really proud that we make an impact every day, specifically to the constituents and to the people that we serve. We work across companies, especially schools and libraries, like I said, to deliver services that not just shrink the digital divide, but increase and accelerate interpersonal communication, company to company, school to school, parents to school, digital healthcare, you name it, right? So we lead with fiber because we do believe fiber is the future, but my team sells everything that Charter represents out in the marketplace. And this slide will just give you a little indication of who we are in terms of 360 libraries, 1,400 schools, 53,000 healthcare practices and hospitals, universities, over almost 250,000 now fiber route miles and fiber lit buildings. And I would say with certainty that there's very few places in the country that we're more fiber rich and dense than we are in Long Beach. And our job is to really increase that penetration and facilitate folks like Gabe to bring services and solutions to the individuals that need them. So what specifically do we do? Unfortunately, I don't have a Long Beach slide. I just have an LA slide, but this kind of gives you an idea of what we do locally, right? With our fiber that's in the ground between aerospace and manufacturing and financial institutions and so on and so forth, in addition to what we do in government, education, and healthcare. But we bring network to your libraries and to your schools so that now, especially in COVID, we've been extremely busy, if you can imagine, between the USS Naval Hospital ship that docked here recently. My team provided the services to that, to the temporary hospital facilities, temporary government facilities, pop-up facilities that do everything from, DMV to EDD for our constituents. But a lot of the work we do has been with the schools in bringing, like I said, network to the libraries, diversity and secondary redundancy to the libraries. And as libraries begin to be a hub in that community, certainly now during COVID, when kids need a place to go, they need a place to study, they need a safe place to be, they need to get more information, access more information, etc. We're pouring a lot of effort into those institutions and so forth, but we also provide managed Wi-Fi for the library so that folks in and around and curbside pickups and so forth can still communicate. For the home student, we do internet access for the underprivileged. And then I'll talk in a little bit about some of our Stay Connected programs that we've launched for households. So not only are we invested in fiber across the country and in Southern California, but we invest heavily in the digital economy here in California. Gabe mentioned some of the investment that we're blessed to do on behalf of working with his company and partners like that. But we have Spectrum Internet Gig, which is available to virtually all the homes and schools and businesses and municipalities in the markets that we serve across our 41 state footprint, of which Long Beach, as I mentioned, is one. Spectrum Wi-Fi hotspots. 1 billion devices have been deployed for gigabit speeds. We're actively engaging in our community for smart cities, and I've met with a lot of folks in the Long Beach community about our smart city and smart community initiatives that we're investing heavily in. We are now the #2 U.S. provider of fiber lit buildings, which is great progress. And all of our businesses can receive up to 100 gig of symmetrical services, and that's a lot of bandwidth. Maybe not at your house, but to the hubs that you're trying to communicate with from your house, that's a lot of bandwidth. Next slide, Amanda. So I talked a little bit about what we've been doing to bridge the digital divide since COVID came out. The first thing that we did was say, we've got to do something immediately to help folks, right? So the first response was a 60-day Wi-Fi, no cost internet offer to anybody who needed immediate access once the schools shut down and people realized they were going to be at home. Then we've always had a Spectrum Internet Assist program that we work very closely with the schools and cities to provide low-cost internet for families that qualify through the school systems and for seniors. And as you can imagine, that list has grown exponentially, this year in 2020. So that's something that my team and working with others, we stay on top of. And then we've done a great deal of work recently with our Stay Connected program. So Spectrum Internet Assist is a program to the individual. Stay Connected is a program where the schools partner with us to provide internet to the individuals on behalf of the schools, to the individual households. So that's a program we've really ramped up. We're doing it for states, counties, and cities across the country. There is unlimited internet usage. It is a cable modem with Wi-Fi. We have a self-installation kit. We also do professional installations for those households that are challenged and aren't able to get things up and working themselves. But it is very reliable. It has tech support, and it is a subsidized program just for K through 12 households that will be learning from home for the foreseeable future. So we're very happy and honored to be part of the Long Beach Chamber. I'm honored to be here today, and I'm really, really proud of the work that we do in Long Beach and all of our communities to bridge the digital divide today and every day. So thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Lynn. Thanks for that great presentation and overview, and thanks for the continued partnership with Charter. You guys are doing some amazing work here in the city, and I'm looking forward to some of the questions here we'll get at the end and how we can continue to partner. Our next presenter is Rebecca Kama. Rebecca comes to us from the city of Long Beach. She's a passionate diversity, equity, and inclusion professional with extensive racial equity, project management, program development, and community engagement expertise. Rebecca is currently the Economic and Digital Inclusion Program Manager at the city of Long Beach. In this role, she's leading and managing the city's economic and digital inclusion initiatives to ensure that low-income communities and communities of color in Long Beach have the opportunities, the resources, and the power they need to thrive economically. Rebecca strives to uplift and empower communities most in need through equitable, inclusive, and culturally competent programs, practices, policies, and system change efforts. Rebecca recently received this year's Digital Equity Champion Award by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Congrats, Rebecca. This national award recognizes outstanding leadership and dedication in advancing digital equity and inclusion and addressing the digital divide, what we're talking about here today. She has a master's degree in public administration with an emphasis in healthcare policy from American University School of Public Affairs, and she received her Bachelor of Science degree in Health Administration from California State University, Northridge. Go CSU. Please welcome Rebecca. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And again, happy Digital Inclusion Week to everyone. I'm so excited that Long Beach is definitely taking the forefront to highlight all of our great efforts that are taking place. So if we can go ahead and turn to the next slide. Thank you. So as my introduction noted, I am the Economic and Digital Inclusion Program Manager here for the City of Long Beach. And I'm relatively new to this role, so I've only been in this role for officially about 2 years now. And it's been great to be able to learn so much from all of our amazing digital inclusion partners who are working in Long Beach. And I see some of you guys are also on this webinar, so thank you very much for joining us. So to provide everyone with a brief overview of the Digital Inclusion Initiative, as was provided in the initial introduction, we are striving to ensure that everyone have access and use of digital literacy training, the internet, technology devices to be successful in society, democracy, and the economy, regardless of their background and identity. And I just want to go ahead and uplift the importance of identity. When we're talking about identity, we are looking at the different indicators that determine success in one's life. So that includes race and ethnicity, gender, also your socioeconomic status, and where you live. So it's very important for us to understand what certain indicators define how communities have equitable access and use of the internet, digital literacy training, and also computers. So as was mentioned before, we take a three-legged stool to the digital inclusion approach. So we see digital inclusion through 3 focus areas, and that includes digital literacy training, the internet, and also computers. And I'm pleased to announce that our initiative was also named the 2020 Digital Inclusion Blazer by the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Next slide, please. So in order to ensure that we're advancing digital equity and inclusion here in the city of Long Beach, we are in the process of creating a digital inclusion roadmap. And this will serve as our strategic plan to ensure that communities of color have equitable access to digital inclusion resources and services. So we are co-developing this strategic plan with local community members and also our stakeholders. So as you can see in the photo, and the one thing that I want to mention is this was pre-COVID-19, so hence no social distancing here. We have been convening a 50-person multidisciplinary committee to be able to shape what this strategic plan will look like in practice. And the one thing that I want to uplift, and I know this was something that was shared as part of our previous speakers as well, is the importance of collaboration. So we have taken a collective impact approach to the work that we're doing here in Long Beach. And what that means is us bringing together different cross-sector partners and the community to be able to address the digital divide. So we don't see this as one sole responsibility on one particular entity. So it's not the city's only responsibility or the responsibility of internet service providers, nonprofit organizations. It is all of us collectively working together to be able to address the digital divide and to come together in one form to be able to support each other by sharing different assets, strengths, and resources that can create equitable strategies for communities most in need. So we have been engaging in the development of the digital inclusion roadmap since last August. We are scheduled to have this developed by the end of this year, and this will include all of the great work that our different organizations that are part of this network are implementing. So the City of Long Beach is serving as that backbone organization, so we are seen as a connector in this space. So we are connecting all of our different digital inclusion partners in one space to be able to have one final plan that will include different strategies. And we are also focusing on not only programmatic solutions, but also systems and policy change. So we understand that even though we may have access to low-cost resources, there are still communities that aren't able to afford that. So how are we as digital inclusion partners being intentional about addressing the systemic and institutional barriers that are creating those inequities? So that is something that our stakeholder group is looking at as well. Next slide, please. Another key component of our work is also focused on community engagement. So we have been able to work closely with our various community partners to be able to engage communities that are most affected by the digital divide. So we have hosted various community pop-ups, workshops, interviews, and surveys to best understand what communities want to be able to use the internet and computers for, and what are the key challenges and barriers to being able to access and use the internet, and what are some solutions that we can put forth to be able to address digital divide. So we have been working closely with 2 consultants. So we've been working closely with McCormick LA, which is led by Leslie Smith. She has been helping us out with stakeholder engagement. And then we've been working closely with Pueblo Planning, which is led by Monique Lopez. And the reason why our community engagement is very unique is we are intentionally incorporating art as part of a way to be able to express our different lived experiences. So as you'll be able to see in a couple of our photos, we were able to work closely with our community-based organization and engage with Long Beach residents through art and storytelling. So they were able to share their unique experiences and different ways that they access the internet and the challenges that they experience by coordinating together by creating and sharing images and different art structures. And this is a great way for us to be able to also address language barriers, because art is definitely a universal language, so everyone's able to participate and to be able to share their experiences. And we have been very intentional about focusing on equity and incorporating an equity lens to our work. So some of our practices have included providing gift cards to Long Beach residents for their time, also compensating the CBOs for their technical assistance, and ensuring that we are intentionally including the lived experiences as part of our roadmap efforts. Next slide, please. So next, I'm going to go ahead and talk about COVID-19 and how this has shaped the digital inclusion space. So as you guys already know, the digital divide has significantly been heightened during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are now seeing most of our services being implemented in a remote/virtual space. So students are now at home. If you need to visit a doctor, you have to do that through telehealth. So it's very important to understand that we are now seeing different challenges that haven't been there before. So in the city, we've been trying to be very intentional with how we're being responsive during this very unique perspective in our history. So the one thing that I want to mention is that in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we recently launched the Connected LB platform. And this platform is done in partnership with the Technology Emerging Fund and also Everyone On in Human IT. And this is a centralized platform for Long Beach residents to be able to access internet services, computers, and digital literacy training. So all of those great resources that Spectrum just mentioned, and also Human IT, Long Beach residents have the ability to be able to find them in this space. Some may ask, if this is a virtual tool, how are communities going to be able to access it? We also understand that even though most communities may not have access to a computer, they're still able to access the internet through a smartphone. So they're able to search for different resources and services through their tool as they're able to find and get access to those resources. Next, I want to mention our COVID-19 Digital Inclusion Response Working Group. So this is a working group that we have convened in response to the pandemic. So we are focusing on implementing different short-term and quick win strategies that will address key challenges that have been raised as part of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're working closely with many of you guys who are on this call to be able to lift those strategies for communities most in need. So we'll be convening, collaborating together, and reporting on different indicators to ensure that over the next few months, we're able to support communities most in need during this pandemic. Next slide, please. And last but not least, I did want to talk about this new and exciting effort. So the City of Long Beach received $1 million of CARES Act funding to be able to support our digital inclusion efforts. So with that funding, we wanted to be very intentional with first and foremost providing resources to our various community partners by opening up an RFP process, and then also launching programs and resources during COVID-19. So one of the programs that we recently just launched as of Monday is our Digital Inclusion Resources Hotline. So this hotline is a community hub, and we actually hire digital inclusion navigators to be able to answer any questions that Long Beach residents have about different digital inclusion resources and services. So Long Beach residents can call this number and they'll speak to the navigator, and they will direct them to resources, whether it's at Human IT or at Spectrum or any other digital inclusion partner, and they're able to serve as that connector, so that way they're able to receive those resources and services. And the great news is that we're able to provide this resource right now in Spanish, and we're also going to be working closely with our community-based organizations to also provide Khmer resources as well. So this will be a resource that will be accessible to many of our Long Beach residents. And we are also facilitating an RFP process to work closely with our Long Beach partners to be able to administer free hotspots, internet service plans, and computers. Also implementing a device lending program where Long Beach residents can check out different hotspots and Chromebooks, providing technical support for those devices, also conducting virtual digital literacy training, also developing different resource guides that encompass all of the great resources and services that are available here in Long Beach, and also conducting community outreach and engagement efforts. So right now we're in the process of reviewing all of those proposals, and we will be announcing them shortly. And we're very much looking forward to working closely with our digital inclusion partners as part of CARES Act funding efforts. But I do want to mention that I'm very, next slide please, that I'm very thankful for this digital inclusion network. Our partners have done a lot of tremendous work in this space, and we are even being recognized on a national front as a best practice on how we're implementing different digital inclusion strategies. So thank you so much to all of our partners for their hard work, and looking forward to continuing to working with you all. Thank you.
Rebecca, great job. It's wonderful to see what you and your team are doing on behalf of the city of Long Beach, and look forward to continuing those partnerships with a lot of our members who you mentioned earlier. So wonderful presentation, and thank you for that. Our last presenter, but certainly not least, is Felipe Monrong. He's the Senior Director of State Government Affairs, West Region for Charter Communications. In his positions, he's responsible for representing the company on a myriad of matters of government agencies and elected officials. His geographical areas and responsibilities include Hawaii, Arizona, and the Orange, San Diego, and Imperial counties of California. Prior to joining Charter Communications, he served as Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Initiatives, San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulkner. In that position, he worked on a variety of policy initiatives, large civic projects, including efforts to expand the San Diego Convention Center to expedite the permitting and application process. Has a bachelor's degree from Loyola University, Maryland, and a law degree from Catholic University of America, Columbus School of Law. Please welcome Felipe. It's all yours.
Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning as we talk a little bit about some of our efforts at Charter Spectrum, as you may know, to help in bridging the digital divide. We recognize that that's an issue that we've been dealing with for a long time, and especially with current circumstances related around COVID, the myriad of issues associated with the digital divide have only become more important to address in a meaningful and sustainable manner. The first, Amanda, if you could go to the next slide, please. Really want to talk about some of our products and services that we have available in order to help customers to do their jobs, especially under the current circumstances, in order to be able to learn remotely, to access services that we used to do in person through the internet, as well as making sure that we're able to remain in touch and connected at a personal level with family and friends and loved ones through the use of technology, where before maybe that wasn't as high a priority. Next slide, please. We really are committed at Charter Spectrum, committed to being part of the solution to closing the digital divide. Rebecca in her presentation talked about community partners and stakeholders. We're proud to be part of one of those organizations and have been engaged with her and the city of Long Beach since I arrived at the company, and even beforehand on those efforts and support those efforts as well. A little bit of information and some of the work that we've been doing in this area. In order to increase access to broadband, we are expanding our network. We've been able to connect over 1.5 million new homes and businesses to our network in the past 2 years. And I can tell you that since COVID in March, the speed of which we've been connecting folks has only increased. Importantly, although as Lynn mentioned, we have a dense fiber network in Long Beach, A lot of those efforts also are directed towards rural areas where access to services are even more limited. In addition, as was brought up by Lynn, we have our Spectrum Internet Assist. This is an industry-leading low-cost broadband service for qualified customers, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Beyond that, we also take the time and efforts to try and increase adoption and access to technology, which is why we support a number of community organizations, and we've actually doubled our yearly commitment to the Spectrum Digital Education Grant Program, which provides computers, education classes, and technology labs for thousands of individuals throughout the country. You know, as was mentioned, we did facilitate a $75,000 contribution to Human IT earlier this year from the Cal Channel, and that's an example of the types of efforts that we take in order to help address some of these issues around the digital divide. As it relates to the Spectrum Internet Assist program, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about it to highlight individuals that are eligible for it. It's a low-cost option. It's eligible for families and seniors, and it offers broadband speeds for those families who are either eligible to participate in the National School Lunch Program for children, or for seniors age 65 and older who receive Supplemental Security Income, SSI benefits. So it's really targeted to those two groups who need access to the internet and broadband services. If you're interested in hearing more about it, the website's provided for you there. Lynn briefly touched on this as well. In September, Spectrum relaunched our remote education offer program to be able to provide free Spectrum internet with speeds of up to 100 megabits per second and Wi-Fi access for households with kindergarten through 12th graders, as well as college students and or educators, teachers. This is really to help address the fact that so many students are learning right now in a distance learning environment. This promotion is available for customers who live in the Spectrum footprint across our 41 states, but don't currently have Spectrum internet services. So it's really intended to help bridge that gap as students and educators were moving their learning onto an online platform. And then lastly, wanted to talk a little bit about our Digital Education Grants Program. This helps bridge the gap in digital literacy through grants, PSAs, public service announcements, as well as engagement with partner groups, organizations, nonprofits, to educate communities on benefits of broadband and how it can be used to improve their lives. One of the issues with the digital divide is adoption and understanding of what's available there. So these efforts are really targeted towards those efforts. And to give you a little idea of the scope, our grants are part of a $5 million commitment to provide digital education to our various charter communities. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Felipe, we appreciate that. Thank you for providing the background and what all Charter is trying to do. Excellent presentations around from everyone and all of our panelists. At this portion, we're going to move on to some Q&A as the panelists queue up here. And just as a reminder to all of our folks who are viewing this webinar, if you've got a question, please use that Q&A chat feature down at the bottom of your screen here on the webinar. So we'll kick it off and we'll kind of set the tone if we can with our panelists. And this is going to be probably different from all of you as far as your view and your opinion based on the areas and organizations you represent. But we talked a lot about what needs to be done. Some of this is going to be a long-term fix, but I think there's some short-term maybe wins out there. So Rebecca, maybe I'll start with you from the city level, and then we'll go to our friends at Charter. What do you see could be some short-term solutions in order to catch up to the digital divide and take care of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we've been able to learn from our different community-based organizations and also from our Long Beach residents is making sure that resources and services are affordable. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of Long Beach residents who are on fixed incomes, especially our older adults. So being able to afford at times low-cost computers and also internet service plans is not feasible for them. So being able to apply for different grant opportunities that allow us to provide resources to the community is definitely something that a lot of our community members do support, and is something that we're also planning on doing as part of our CARES Act funding. So that's definitely an immediate solution that we would see to be helpful in this aspect. And also just continuing to understand and learning from our Long Beach residents. As part of our digital inclusion roadmap development process, we have been able to hear some of those unique stories and perspectives that come directly from our community. So even though we have access to different types of data, such as the American Community Survey data that tells us how many people are affected by digital divide and what that looks like when you disaggregate it by race, by income, by gender, by age, it doesn't tell you the unique stories of why communities still don't have access. So we've been trying to listen and understand and how we can incorporate those unique experiences as part of our solutions. And we're continuing to do that as we develop our roadmap in collaboration with all of our partners.
Oh, great answer. And Gabe, I'll go to you next, because I think you're already doing a lot of the short-term solution stuff and setting your company and your team up for long-term in order to handle this this issue. But I'd love to hear from you.
Take myself off of mute. Yeah, so Rebecca did a great job highlighting, you know, the 3 pillars of the digital divide. And I added one more as far as providing that technical support service to any low-income family in our Long Beach community, and, you know, even across the nation. The way I like to look at the digital divide is not something like a light switch where you just turn off and now it's fixed and it's done with. The digital divide is actually almost a bit, unfortunately, like a virus that's constantly evolving. It moves at the speed of technology. And as we all know, technology moves quickly. So as a human IT entity, I try to create a culture to where we can adapt and change to the rapidly changing needs that some of our, unfortunately, low-income families face when it comes to being left on the wrong side of the digital divide. That's how we came up with the tech support service, for instance. That's not something that we always offered. It's relatively new. It's a relatively new service for us. Because if you think about, okay, all of a sudden, instantly, everyone needs to learn from home, right? And not only do they need access to a good connection and hardware, they need somewhere to go to ask questions, right? The teacher's not in the room, right? You don't see staff walking around the hallways where you can grab somebody really quick and maybe ask them a quick technical question. You know, so that is an example of how the digital divide has evolved during coronavirus. If you think about what's to come, as well as from a connectivity standpoint, we have 5G right on the horizon. What is that going to look like? What type of new divide is that going to present? And human IT is paying attention to these things. And through creative collaboration, we're confident that we can make a difference in getting folks on the right side of that digital divide, whatever that may be at the time.
Excellent points, Gabe. We appreciate that. Let's go to our partners at Charter. Any short-term solutions you want to talk about, and obviously what you guys are already doing?
Sure, I'll take a couple and then I'll hand it over to Felipe. As I mentioned earlier, we did the, right when COVID hit, we tried to react quickly, and we did the 60-day program to help, help people bridge the news of COVID and the sudden need to stay at home with a long-term plan of what were they going to do next, right? While they found a service or funding or help from, Rebecca and Gabe and others, right? So we also, from an enterprise perspective, came out with a program to help clients, companies and schools and libraries do temporary upgrades for COVID. So if they didn't have enough bandwidth to give all those students access to get back into the schools, servers and so forth, we offered them opportunities to do temporary upgrades at a very reasonable price outside of their contract window until they could figure out what to do longer term and what this meant to them. We're also working with a lot of our clients right now on a couple of things. One, you guys have both mentioned the CARES Act. So, and I mentioned that my team are very educated on HIMSS for healthcare and CARES and the California Teleconnect Fund and all the different federal programs that can help clients subsidize or pay for this type of bandwidth. So we're working with a lot of our clients now on how do they change from the plan that they had into a temporary / long-term program that will help give everyone access to their information. And then last but not least, of recent, and you have to kind of stay abreast of what's going on, like Gabe mentioned, there's either the speed of technology or the speed of new news, right? The FCC just recently opened another window for USAC, which is the funding for schools, to allow schools to upgrade. So when we came in and said you can upgrade temporarily, let's see what happens. And now the FCC has said, you're right, a lot of people are in this issue. We'll give you a month window where you can upgrade outside of the typical funding window. So that's been a flurry of activity for my team to address that with schools. And then also the Stay Connected program is ongoing. A lot of schools have tried Wi-Fi hotspots for their households, and that hasn't turned out to be a perfect solution for some of them. And so temporary or otherwise, they've looked to find another solution. So we're continuing to work with both K through 12 and higher education on Stay Connected to put in place short-term and long-term solutions for them that will help them respond to their constituents' needs and their enrollment needs. Back to you.
Felipe, did you want to add to any of that there?
I would just add very quickly that in terms of on the short term, probably the most important thing from my perspective is actually just being able to identify these individuals and organizations who are struggling and how to connect with them in terms of what services are currently available. That's why for us, it's so important to have partners like Rebecca at the City of Long Beach, like Gabe at Human IT, because they're able to connect with these individuals maybe in a way that's not as easy for us as an organization. So in order to be able to seamlessly hand them off back and forth so that they're aware of what services are available and perhaps overcome some of that lack of knowledge that they may have as to the resources that are available. That's very important in the short term.
Oh, great points. So that's a good reminder of the newly launched, hotline number that Rebecca had talked about, that, if folks have some issues and need some help, to use that service. Again, newly launched just this week on Monday. So thanks to Rebecca and her team at the city for doing that. We've got another question here in the chat that comes up, and I'll throw this out to anybody and everybody because this might be a little bit different compared to some of the areas, especially on the charter team folks that you guys are working in other cities and other communities. But somebody's asked, where is Long Beach in terms of, are we ahead of the game when it comes to digital inclusion as compared to other cities? How does Long Beach compare to others?
I would say I'll take that one since I kind of call on everybody from private enterprise to public institutions from a corporate perspective. I would say that you're in the top quartile of the folks that I deal with from that perspective. You guys were already ahead of it. As I think somebody mentioned, way before COVID came out, you were already way ahead of the digital divide as a city. I mean, you can drive around and see how progressive Long Beach is. So that parlays into what we see as being a provider to you. And I've seen that accelerate post-COVID across the board, the companies that are there, as well as the all the customers that we work with there.
And I can speak to that as well. So I'm also a part of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance Network. And that is a nice national hub for different digital inclusion practitioners to co-collaborate and share best ideas and different strategies that they're also implementing in their respective jurisdictions. And one of the things that we've also learned as part of being in that space is that the COVID-19 pandemic has also heightened the digital divide, obviously, in other cities. So there are now new cities that are coming into the digital inclusion space that haven't engaged as before. So we are definitely on the forefront, but I also want to mention that there are so many other cities that are doing great work. So I've been able to learn from the city of Portland, who's had their plan developed for about 5 years now, also the city of Seattle. So we're definitely on the forefront, and we're recognized for that through our digital inclusion trailblazer honor. But we're definitely continuing to learn from other cities who have been at this work for quite some time.
Great point. And Gabe, you could probably talk to maybe some of the work you're doing outside of Long Beach and what that compares to what we're doing here in Long Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I'm actually calling in from the city of Detroit right now. And we have a new location in Detroit, Michigan, mainly because it's the most underconnected city in the entire country. So compared to Long Beach, yes, it's behind as far as ensuring that all the residents are on the right side of the digital divide. And that's kind of what I was in the beginning of my presentation. What I was alluding to is a big reason I'm very proud to be a resident of Long Beach is because of our digital inclusion plan and all the great work that the city is doing to incorporate partnerships in order to shrink the digital divide. However, it's very important that as a city, we don't rest on our laurels, right? It's a mountaintop that we're at right now. Yes, we're on a ridge, but that's rented space in my opinion, and we need to keep going. Like I said before, it's the digital divide is changing, and by no means is it completely eliminated in Long Beach. We still have a ton of work to do. Just even imagine instantly, all of a sudden, everyone has access to a good working computer in Long Beach, as well as a broadband connection. What does the digital divide look like now? What it looks like is one person's ability to use it versus another, and how they use it to leverage their personal circumstance in order to achieve whatever it is, whatever goal it is that they're trying to achieve. So like I said, the digital divide is always evolving. And as a city, we need to pay attention to this, not rest in our laurels and stay ahead of the game.
Some great points, Gabe. We appreciate that. We're getting close to end of time here, so I'm going to do one more quick question to everybody. But as I ask this question, we've got a comment or a request from some of our attendees. If somebody from your individual teams, if you could put some contact information in the chat box, so our folks that are watching this can get a hold of you, that'd be great, or somebody on your team. We'd appreciate that. For those questions that we don't get to here that are in the box, to all you on the line here, we'll do our best to get those answers back to you, whether it's through this presentation or through our panelists here. So the last question, and it's kind of just a really broad, no pun intended here, about broadband and being connected. And we talked a little bit about this, I think, from our charter partners, what the strain may or may not have been during the increased use when the health orders happened and COVID and everybody went back to home and hopped online, essentially virtual. So name your favorite video platform, conferencing platform that you've got to hop on in order to conduct meetings. What was it like on your side? So to our charter communication partners, and how did you guys deal with that? And is there a way that you can compare that to, say, when things were normal as far as the access to internet, and then what you guys have had to really step up your game and perform?
Felipe, you want to take that one?
Sure, I'm happy to start that off. So what I would say is that at the network level, our network is very robust, and it's been very successful in withstanding the additional, I'll use the word loosely, strain or use on that network from individuals. What's been interesting about the last 6-7 months has been that the way that individuals and organizations are accessing the network is obviously different because they're doing it from different locations. So the challenge, if you want to call it that, has been to make sure that we can maintain our services more in residential areas with people working and studying from their homes versus where maybe they were accessing the internet in an office space, and making sure that the network is able to be flexible enough to meet those needs. A lot of our work in the government affairs side over these past 6-7 months have been working with various municipalities to make sure that we can continue to service and upgrade our network at the community level and at the neighborhood level to make sure that we can meet those changing needs in terms of construction and stuff like that. So that's been a lot of our work. But I would have to say that on the whole, we've been really, really successful. I was very scared of that story that would come out in some news organization of,
Right.
you know, being knocked out for a week or something like that in March. You know, the panic would set in at 3 a.m. We didn't hear any of stories like that for us or any other service provider.
Great, great points. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We're at the 1 hour mark. I want to take this time to just say thank you. Special thanks to Charter Communications, Human IT, City of Long Beach, Felipe, Lynn, Gabe, Rebecca. Thank you so much for your time and giving that up today and helping us celebrate Digital Inclusion Week and trying to reach some folks maybe a little bit more that maybe otherwise wouldn't know what digital inclusion is or digital equity. I think your presentations today help fill that in. I want to say special thanks to Amanda Donahue, who's in the chamber office, who assisted us with some of the technology stuff on the back end here, along with a lot of the other partners that we had that assist us with today's presentation. As a reminder, today's presentation has been recorded and it's going to be shared with the registrants of this webinar. Also, it'll be cataloged on the Chamber's webinar library and be shared throughout the rest of not only this week, but this year. So people want access to that, will have that. So with that, I want to say again, thank you very much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you at the next Chamber event.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day. See you guys.
Thank you.